Hey folks, Coach Patrick here from Endurance Nation, back with another video cast / podcast, an update on all things endurance. This week, we're talking about simulating key race environments. This is part of our educational series, Inside Endurance Nation, the world's largest endurance community. We help athletes just like you be their personal best through sharing our experience, sharing best practices, sharing the latest scientific knowledge, all with the goal of making sure that you're 100% ready to perform your best on your big day, whether that's a race or just a solo challenge or whatever it may be. Smarter is faster, smarter is stronger. So let's dive right in. Okay. So simulating key race environments. Your race simulation workout is the most important thing that you do all year, right? So people think about their races, they sign up for races, they want to be ready for races. But getting ready for races, the way we do it inside Endurance Nation, involves doing a race simulation. Race simulation, just what it sounds like. Take your race and we're going to model it in our training. Some people have that expression, right? Race day is really just like a long catered training day. I disagree with that completely, but we do want to have, long solo planned workouts that are a lot like race day. Okay. So without the fanfare, without the cowbells, without the fans, just getting you out there and doing your session. And this is a really important workout because it allows you to connect your fitness where it is now with your aspirations on the day. We start our year with aspirations, like no pressure. But when we start the season, we're like, I'm doing that race in 9 months and I want to do it like this, right? And that's in the back of our head. You planted a seed all year long. You've been working, building, growing, recovering, adjusting. All of that's been happening all year in preparation for this goal that you've set. And most athletes kind of hold on to that goal, whether or not it's actually attainable, which is fine. It's not like there's a critique for that. But it does make sense to actually have the rubber meet the road and let's see what happens, right? And so that's what our race simulation workout is. So the next level beyond just a regular race simulation workout is to say, how do we do something where we can simulate the race environment? This is level 2, right? So level 1 is actually doing a race simulation. So for a marathon, a race simulation takes about 18 miles. Inside Endurance Nation, we'll do about 18 miles or no more than 3 hours. So if you've been running, like no more than 3 hours in any run workout ever, usually 2.5, but for the race simulation, I'll give you 3. Okay. If it's an Ironman, then we do the swim and we do a 112-mile bike and we do a 6-mile run. Don't need to do the whole thing, but we get through the most of it, right? So pretty straightforward stuff. So the goal here is to basically create the conditions that you will experience on race day and then implement the effort that you plan to put into place on race day. Effort, nutrition, strategy, gear, all of that goes into your simulation. But this next level is the race environment. This is where we say, let's go one step beyond, can I run in preparation for a marathon? Like, can I execute my pace? Can I execute my nutrition? But actually thinking about the environment itself. This is really important because when we think about racing, the number one factor that really takes us out of our box from training, the controlled natural environment that we've created for ourselves at home, perhaps indoors, whatever that may be, is the weather, is the conditions, is the climate, is the competition. There's so many other factors that come into play. So we need to help you get beyond the basics in terms of simulation for you to get better. We're going to do that quickly today in today's video cast / podcast. All right. So here's the Endurance Nation 5-step framework to making sure that your next race simulation is the best one possible. No small feat, but here we go. I nailed it down to 5 for you so we can help you save time. And you can do all of them. You can do them in order. You can pick and choose whatever you like. You are obviously on your own, but happy to help you out. Okay. So here we go. Number 1. The first part of the, replicating that race environment is to do the macro course review. This is baseline. This is like 101. You should hopefully already be doing this. That means you understand like the full distance of the race. You've taken a look into your training, the athlete guide. You've sort of said, how do I map what's going to happen on the day with how I'm going to race, right? So there's 8 stations every 10 miles. You could do the math on the 10 miles. How long is it going to take you? What kind of food do you need? You get a sense of the time of day, so you understand what you need to do for sleep and preparation for that. You understand the different disciplines, etc. This is sort of 101. Although you'd be surprised how many people show up to race day without the adequate gear or fitness to actually complete the event. And no small percentage of them is actually surprised, right? One of the most disheartening moments, quick story for you, that I've ever seen at an endurance race was the bike mountain line at Ironman Lake Placid, where a gentleman had shown up and was trying to get on his bike, had his bike shoes, was trying to clip in, couldn't clip in, jamming, forcing it, etc., until he took his cleats off and realized that, and we all realized that he'd actually brought his mountain biking shoes with him, but he was trying to get on his triathlon bike. He brought the wrong shoes. He'd never tested his bike all week. He just put it in the area and then went to get on it on the day, and his feet could not go in the shoes. So he went back into transition, bless him, got his run shoes out of the run bag, and then was going to pedal in his running shoes on his bike. But that's a big, big issue that arises simply because preparation does not live in the right place, right? Okay, so let's do that macro course review. Pretty straightforward, right? Let's not be one of those stories. Don't want to be a Coach P story. Okay, number 2, check the weather. Sounds crazy, but the more advanced athlete will actually sit down and go look at some of the historical weather. You can go back and look at weather.com or whatever it is and just see what the trends have been, what it typically is, and what it was the last few years, depending on the environment. If you're in the mountains of Lake Placid, or if you're sort of on the coastal area or down south, like where the weather's been different, say Texas, things can be a little variable. And in general, the globe, whichever side of the political spectrum you're on, does seem to be getting hotter and changing. Athletes are acutely aware of this, much more so than the average population. As a result, we want to know what that weather history looks like, because that will help you modify your training. If I live in a beautiful place with warm but not moderate temperatures, I can train and be happy with, say, a bottle an hour of training for my hydration, right? But on race day, if I know I'm going into a place where it's going to be 80 degrees, like at the low, 85, 90 at the high, sort of as what that median temperature may lie into that sort of window, let me say, you know what? I need to practice as though I will be consuming fluids and working out, etc., at that level, which I know will be much harder than it is right now in my happy environment. So I'm actually going to go ahead and take a dive into it and see what that looks like. Then I'm going to schedule my key workouts accordingly. So if I've got some like longer runs and so on, I know on race day, say if I'm doing an Ironman, I'm going to be running later in the day. Or if you've got a race that starts later in the day, say you've got 11 a.m. marathon, starts at 11 a.m., 1, 2 o'clock, you're going to be in the heat of the day. Knowing that, you can then adjust your schedule. Hopefully things line up for you that you're able to get the majority of that workout done in conditions that mimic what you'd be experiencing on race day. So if you're doing that Florida Keys Ultra, which starts at 11 a.m. because they just hate human beings, even the ones who sign up for their race, shout out to Maurice for getting that done this year, then you know it's going to be crazy, crazy hot. So schedule your workouts in that environment so you'll be ready. Not all the workouts, because we don't want you to get crushed, but the key race simulation workouts do need to be done in those conditions so you can adapt and learn in preparation for the day. All right. Third option here, the micro course review. We did the macro, now we're in the micro. In this case, I'm going to zoom in on the race itself and identify key areas, the critical success factors that we are able to replicate in our training. So pick any race and say, oh, great, the front half of this race is actually pretty hilly. Or say it's Boston Marathon and the last half, or last third really, is really hilly. So how do we handle that? How do we handle from 19 on, if we know, or 17 on, if it's going to be tough for the hills? How do we mimic that in our training? Well, we can actually plan routes that map to those conditions. So we've already mapped to the weather, but you can also map to the conditions. Flat at start, hilly later, or like flat hills and then flat and then hills because it's a 2-loop course. Whatever that may be, we can replicate that in training by just being strategic. Or if you're fortunate enough to own, a treadmill or indoor training device like cycling, etc., you can use the resistance and modulate the differential, the friction, for you to actually be able to do the work relative to the load that you expect to put out on race day. So this is sort of that next level where we say, on race day, I know that the first hour at Lake Placid's, fairly straightforward, not easy, but straightforward. I've got this nice descent, a flat section, but at mile 30, the road goes up and it goes up for about 15 minutes. And I've got to do a hard session of 15 minutes and then keep riding for another hour before I get to halfway, right? So I can mimic it such that I get to 30 miles or whatever that time may be on the day in my own town. And then put in a hard 15-minute effort to mimic what I'll be doing on race day, like literally laying it out. It's possible to do. We just have to be a little strategic, get a little creative with maps, or perhaps with your ones and zeros on your computer to be ready for that with your treadmill or for your trainer. But that's really helpful as well. All right, so that's the micro course review. The fourth framework, this one is your nutrition and gear planning. I call this one all the things. And these are all the things. People think about swim fitness or bike fitness or run fitness. They think about paces and targets and times, then worry about the weather. They may or may not have looked into it because they may not be as prepared as you are. But we all get down to this sort of nutrition and gear planning side that's really important. And what we want to practice here is that execution. So think about what you're going to be eating and drinking on race day. And we're going to have to start eating and drinking exactly that in these key workouts. So practicing. In fact, for those of you doing these important long races, I might be practicing that nutrition every weekend, even though I may not be doing a race simulation, up to you. But I've found that it takes a while for my body to adapt to the strategy that I want to implement. And it's more often than not a little bit of a wrestling match with my stomach to make sure I can get it right. You can't just sit down and say, hey, let's do a race thing. And your stomach's not going to say, I love it, we're down. It's going to take a while for that to come around, right? So you got to do some serious strategic planning. And it starts here with number 4, this nutrition and gear planning. So we're going to do our nutrition as we plan on race day. We're also going to wear the gear in the simulation workouts that we're going to be wearing on the day. So wear the kit, ride the same bike, ride the disc, have the computer screen set up the way that you want to be set up, have the run jacket on, the vest, have your fluids you're going to be carrying, bring the elements you plan on bring in an umbrella, plan the route, etc. This is your chance to kind of put all of that into play. This way we make sure that our shoes are good, our hat, helmet, headwear, good, sunglasses, good, not good, sunscreen choices, good, yes, check. Nutrition, does it work? Maybe, maybe not. We're going to find out now. And we do it by making sure that this replication process works. So the goal is not that the simulation will ever be perfect, but that we learn a great deal coming out of each one such that your race itself or your big event is actually pretty frictionless. All right, well, before I get distracted here, last of the 5 points of this 5-point framework is to write and review your race plan and then sit down and then review it. Cannot say it enough. When you write and review your race plan, you're actually putting into paper your actions. Already you have increased the odds significantly of you actually following those steps because you wrote them down. Just going by memory, not so much. It's like going to the supermarket for somebody else, but not writing anything down. Can you do it? It could be close, but if it really mattered that it was all or nothing, you had to bring everything home or nothing counted, it's probably not going to work out for you. So we want to write that stuff down. And it's the same thing with our race plan. We write it down, we lay it all out. This way we can see it and learn from it. We're going to execute it. And we're going to come back and say, my plan was to, eat or drink X amount of food. Let me take a look at my setup here. Oh, I've got this much fluid left over, or so many calories left over, or I remembered halfway I kind of didn't feel so good, so I changed this or that. All of that can then be added. So we have our original plan, then we have the notes on the updated plan, and we take these two things, and that's where we create our next plan for the second race simulation, because there are two, or we modify and say if it's just going to the race, and we update that to be our race plan moving forward, and we're incorporating our own lessons learned. So race simulations are super important, but how you conduct them equally so. That's our 5-point framework to making sure that you will be successful, not only in your simulation, but on the big day. If you want to learn more about training and racing excellence for endurance, please head over to endurancenation.us. You can create a trial membership, check things out, explore, contact us using the widget at the bottom of the website. We're happy to help you out. Thanks, folks, for tuning in. Happy racing, happy simulating. I'll talk to you soon.